All right, all you A pushers out there, this is me, Mr. B, AP US History, your source for all your knowledge and notes related to advanced placement US history. I'm Mr. B, and this is American Experiments, European Exploration, Colonization, and Interactions with Native Americans, 1492 to 1700. I got some good quotes for you to start off the chapter. I got one from Juan Ginés de Sepulveda in 1547, who says, "The Spaniards have a perfect right to rule these barbarians of the New World and the adjacent islands, who in prudence, skill, and virtues and humanity are inferior to the Spanish as children to adults or women to men. I might even say between apes and men." And then in stark contrast is Bartolome de las Casas in defense of the Indians from 1548, almost in response to Mr. Sepulveda, or Dr. Sepulveda. "The Indians are our brothers, and Christ has given his life for them. Why then do we persecute them with such inhuman savagery when they do not deserve such treatment? The Indians will embrace the teachings of the gospel, for they are not stupid or barbarous." Barbarous? Barbarous. All right, with those things in mind, the Europeans were discovering the New World for the first time and interacting with the natives, and they had to figure all that sort of out. Let's get started immediately. All right, it starts with Christopher Columbus and Spain's tribute colonies, the Spanish conquistadors, Cortez and Pizarro, following after the original voyages of Christopher Columbus, overthrew the existing Native American empires and civilizations of the Aztecs in central Mexico and the Incas in Peru, and created tribute colonies to extract mineral and farm resources to generate wealth for Spain. A new American world. The Spanish created the encomienda system, which was land granted to conquistadors. Natives had to pay tribute in the form of labor and goods, especially precious metals, gold, and silver. The interactions between the Spanish natives and the Africans resulted in new racial mixtures, such as the mestizos, which is Spanish Indians, the mulattoes, which is Spanish African, and the zambo, which are Indian African. A caste system or casta system developed based on how much on race. Spanish priests and missionaries converted natives to Catholicism or Christianity and suppressed local religious practices. This tribute colonies worked well because the Aztecs and the Incas also already had a tribute system set up with the local tribes, and so the Spanish just replaced their Aztec leaders or the Inca leaders with Spanish leaders and continued to extract tribute from the local Indians around them. The Columbian Exchange. Christopher Columbus his name is given to the Columbian Exchange, which is the biological transfer of plants, animals, and diseases between the New World and the Americas and the Old World, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and had profound effects on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. In the Western Hemisphere, in the Eastern Hemisphere, the foods of the Western Hemisphere, especially maize, which is corn, potatoes, and tomatoes, increased crop yields and led to population growth in other countries. And other continents. Europeans brought horses, cows, pigs, chickens, changing the natives' diet and transportation methods, not like they're riding on chickens, but they were riding on horses. European diseases such as smallpox, influenza, and yellow fever killed 90% of the Native American population in the first 100 years of contact, weakening Native American societies and making it much easier for the Europeans to colonize. Can underestimate the effect of the European diseases in terms of wiping out the native populations. The Protestant challenge to Spain. Spanish Netherlands and England become Protestant and challenge Catholic Spain for territory in the Americas and the Caribbean. Henry VIII of England starts the Church of England, or Anglicans, because he wants to get remarried, and the Pope won't let him, which is kind of a long story, so we won't talk about it here. Later on, Elizabeth I sponsors British pirates and colonization. The turning point is England, when England defeats the Spanish Armada in 1588. This is a sure sign that England is becoming more powerful and challenging Spain for supremacy on the ocean. England is helped economically by the First Industrial Revolution and state-assisted manufacturing and trade, which is a vocabulary word called mercantilism, which is the policy of the government to reduce imports and increase exports to generate wealth, allowing them to build up their navy and fund future colonization efforts. England now has the merchant fleet and the wealth needed to challenge Spain's control of the Americas, and they will. Plantation colonies. The next type of colonies after the tribute colonies are plantation colonies. Portugal, England, France, and the Netherlands created successful plantation colonies in Brazil, growing sugar, which is the hot commodity, which is the most expensive commodity at the time and the real money maker in the Americas. Jamestown, Virginia, and Maryland in North America are created as plantation colonies or tobacco colonies for growing tobacco, and the Caribbean islands focus on growing sugar. Again, the big money maker is sugar. Brazil's sugar plantations. They're huge plantations, and the sugar mills were set up on the east coast of Brazil, mostly by the Portuguese, who had control of Brazil. European diseases killed the native population, so African slaves were brought in large numbers due to the backbreaking agricultural labor, milling, and processing that involved in sugar production. So this was they were shipped across the Atlantic Ocean from the west coast of Africa, which is actually fairly like a not too bad far away trip across the Atlantic Ocean from it was really that bad, but relatively close. It was a bad trip. Nothing good about it. England's tobacco colonies. The Jamestown Settlement, 1607. 1607 is Jamestown, Virginia. The Virginia is a joint stock company, a new economic thing where people invest in the company to make money. They sent young males to establish a tribute colony because it worked so well for the Spanish on the east coast of North America. They were looking for gold, like the Spaniards got a bunch of gold and silver from the Incas and the Aztecs, but there was no gold, and so the colonists starved. Luckily for them, Powhatan, the local native leader, treated the English traders as allies, demanding European goods in exchange for foodstuffs, allowing them to survive. He went even so far as marrying his daughter, Pocahontas, to John Rolfe, one of the leading men of Jamestown. He was the man responsible for shifting to growing to tobacco instead of looking for gold. The British quickly the joint stock company, the Virginia Company, created the headright system, which was to encourage settlement to Jamestown, Virginia. So for 50 to 100 acres, you got 50 to 100 acres for every freeman who imports indentured servants. Indentured servants were, we'll talk about them a little bit later. They were people in England who were brought over to work as for no pay once for like 5 years, but we'll get to that in a second. The House of Burgesses was established in 1619, which was a representative government made up of wealthy landowners that dominated the government of Jamestown, Virginia. Tobacco plantations changed the native/European interactions because the British need more and more land to grow more and more tobacco, which creates the Indian War of 1622, also known as the Anglo-Powhatan Wars. So at first, the Powhatans were friendly with the British people, but as they started conflicting over land, they start fighting. The influx of migrants and the demand for land sparked a war between the Jamestown settlers and the Powhatan Indians. Jamestown barely survives. The relationship with natives is now armed conflict. Lord Baltimore to the north, slightly to the north, Lord Baltimore settles Catholics in Maryland. So the next colony we're going to talk about is Maryland, and set up in 1632. Maryland was set up as a refuge for Catholics who were subject to persecution in England. Remember how Henry VIII had converted to Protestantism and created the Church of England. He started persecuting anyone who was not a member of the Church of England, and which means that if you were Catholic, you had to flee the country or face arrest. Maryland, they set up a representative government in Maryland just like they did in Virginia. The tensions between the Catholics and the Protestants led to the passage of the Toleration Act of 1649, which guaranteed a limited amount of religious freedom. All Christian religions were allowed in Maryland, a level of the religious toleration. The economy in Maryland was tobacco plantations, which became the chief crop, and there you have it. The Caribbean islands, or Caribbean islands. British were able to colonize several Caribbean islands, including Jamaica. They focused on sugar plantation, which was the most profitable commodity at the time. Plantation life. Initially, there were freeholds, which is smallish family farms, then large plantations. The headright system really contributed to this, which, as we saw earlier, gave 50 acres of land, 50 to 100 acres of land to anyone who paid the passage for indentured servants. Plantation life in the colonies was harsh. There was no towns, there was no community, there was few families, there was malaria, which killed a lot of people, and a high mortality rate, which, a lot of people were dying. Indentured servitude, to get more people there because of the harsh conditions and diseases that was killing everyone. They created indentured servitude, which was if you work for a master for 4 to 5 years, after which you were free to marry and or work for yourself in exchange. The landowner pays for your trip to America. This was a way to get poor people over to America who could not afford the passage. Few servants ever escaped poverty. A lot of them died before their time was up, but the ones that did would then go out and look for land, getting in conflict with the Native Americans. African laborers. The Barbados Slave Code was established in 1661, which is from the Caribbean island Barbados. It was a code of force and terror to keep control of slave populations that were brought over to Barbados to grow sugar. In 1619 was the first record of African slaves in British colonies. That was in Jamestown, Virginia. Very few slaves until after the 1660s. So this was after Bacon's Rebellion, which was 1675 to 76, which accelerates this change from indentured servants to slavery, and a gradual shift to race, black-white or white-black, rather than religion, Christian, pagan, which used to be what separated people who were slaves and not slaves. The Neo-European colonies. Neo-European colonies are New France, New Netherlands, New England. You can see that Neo means new, and New France, New Netherlands, New England. And the first one was New France in 1609. Samuel de la Champlain founded Quebec. It was based on fur trading with the Huron Indians. Jesuit Catholic missionaries worked to convert the native populations. They had really good relations and even intermarried with the natives, which they called métis or mixed-race offspring. There was no self-government. They were ruled by the French crown. They had a very small population and claimed all the land drained by the Mississippi River. They opened up a port at New Orleans in 1718, claimed all that land, but mostly for fur trading. They were not involved in large-scale agriculture or plantation or even tribute. They were basically trading for furs. New Netherlands, 1621. New Netherlands was the West Indian Company sets up New Amsterdam on Manhattan Island. It's a very small colony. They focus on fur trading. It's mostly ignored because they're not making very much money. It became a British colony. It became the British colony of New York in 1664. And then in that area in New England, kind of in that northeastern area, was the Iroquois. The Iroquois was the rise of the Iroquois, the Five Nations. So they created a thing called the Iroquois Confederacy, which united 5 Native American groups to create a powerful confederacy based in central New York. They dominated other tribes and became a powerful force in colonial times until after the French and Indian War. Indeed, the Iroquois would be enemies of the Hurons, which would cause all sorts of problems. And there you have it, students. This is our first notes over European colonization and the different types of colonies that were set up. Thank you for participating. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, put them in the show notes, and put them in the comments. Like, subscribe, add, and until next time, this is me, Mr. B, History, signing off.